Welcome to Podspective, an initiative by Daayitwa Abhiyan encompassing of Daayitwa, Governance Lab, Nepal Leadership Academy, and Nepal Rising. This podcast series delves into values carried by these organizations and discusses themes of governance, leadership, and innovation with the aim to promote sustainable economic development of Nepal and evidence-based policy making.
नमस्कार यहाँहरू सबैजनालाई हार्दिक स्वागत छ यो पडस्पेक्टिभ बाई दायित्व अभियानको तेस्रो संस्करणमा हाम्रो यो पडकास्टको मुख्य कुरा भनेकै आशा नेपालमा अहिले पनि बस्छ र देशलाई हामीहरूले नै अगाडि बढाउने हो भन्ने सोचका साथमा यो पडकास्ट गर्दैछौँ र त्यो गर्ने क्रममा आज हामीहरूसँग गेस्टको रूपबाट यस्ता व्यक्ति हुनुहुन्छ जसले 27 वर्षको यो यात्रामा उहाँको व्यावसायिक यात्रामा चाहिँ एउटा सानो ठाउँबाट सानो तरिकाबाट सुरु गर्नु भएको उद्यम आज एउटा ठुलो कम्पनी बनिसक्यो। हामी स्वागत गर्न चाहन्छौँ वर्ल्डलिङ्कको फाउन्डर र चेयरपर्सन दिलीप अग्रवाल दाईलाई। स्वागत छ दाई।
Thank you, Pukar. It's good to be here. धन्यवाद।
गुड, इट्स भेरी नाइस दाई। धेरै पछि मजासँग गहिरो कुरा गर्न लागिरहेका छौँ। भेरी एक्साइटेड। कतिचोटि दाइले के गर्नु भएको छ भन्ने कुरा मिडियामा होइन हामीले देख्छौँ। आज थोरै गहिरो हिसाबले कुरा गर्न मन थियो। अनि सुरु चाहिँ मैले यही क्रममा दाइकै जोर्नीबाट सुरु गर्न चाहेको हुँ। बाहिरबाट हेर्दा कि अब झट्टै हेर्दा त मान्छेले 2023मा को वर्ल्डलिङ्कलाई देख्छ नि त होइन। 2023 को वर्ल्डलिङ्क जसमा चाहिँ नेपाल व्यापी रूपबाट यहाँहरू पुगिसक्नुभयो होइन। अब नेपालको कम्पिटिटिभ ल्यान्डस्केपमा पनि एउटा ठाउँमा पुगिसक्नुभयो। यति धेरै एम्प्लोइजहरू छन्, यो सबै देख्छौँ। तर 1995, 96, 97 को बारेमा थोरैलाई याद हुन्छ। हामीले त्यो याद गर्दैनौँ भनौँ न, हामीहरू अलि यस्ता कुरा देख्छौँ। सो
धेरै कमलाई थाहा होला।
धेरै कमलाई थाहा हुन्छ। सो दाइले हामीहरूलाई चाहिँ यो एन्टरप्रेन्योरशिपको जर्नीको त्यो इनिसियल डेजमा लिएर जानुहोस् न। हाउ डिड यु गेट स्टार्टेड? वाट ह्यापन्ड?
Okay, Pukar. So I've already said this many times, but again, I would love to repeat it because
as an entrepreneur,
because I think it's an inspiring story. Even whenever I lose my way, I think back to what got me started. So मेरो बुवाको इच्छा के थियो भने म पनि बायोकेमिस्ट बनेर उहाँको ल्याबलाई चाहिँ म निरन्तरता दिउँ भनेर उहाँले सोच्नु भएको थियो। त्यसैले म बायोकेमिस्ट्री पढिरहेको थिएँ। आइटी वाज अलरेडी आई वाज भेरी गुड एट। मलाई त्यसमा इट वाज समथिङ द्याट केम नेचुरली टु मी। अनि थर्ड इयर कलेजमा चाहिँ अमेरिकामा तिमीलाई थाहा नै छ, यु हेभ टु डिसाइड होइन। अब दुई वर्षसम्म यु कुड डु वाट एभर यु वान्टेड। थर्ड इयर यु हेभ टु नाउ टेक अ कल। वाट आर यु गोइङ टु डु? विच करियर आर यु गोइङ टु अप्ट फर? आर यु गोइङ टु स्टे इन अमेरिका or go back to Nepal? If you stay in America, are you going to go to graduate school? Are you going to go to Wall Street? मेरो बेलामा वाल स्ट्रिटै जान्थ्यो धेरैजना। इकोनोमिक्स पढ्थ्यो होइन, वाल स्ट्रिट जाने क्रम धेरै थियो। सो आई हेड टु टेक द्याट कल एन्ड आई वान्टेड टु किप माई अप्सन्स ओपन। सो म प्रिमेड पनि गरेँ, म इकन पनि गरेँ। आई डिडन्ट गेट अ मेजर बट आई डिड हाई लेभल इकन कोर्सेस बिकज अल माई फ्रेन्ड्स डिड इकन एन्ड दे अल वेन्ट टु वाल स्ट्रिट। इकन पनि गरेँ। अनि मलाई पर्सनली न्युरो साइन्सेसमा धेरै इन्ट्रेस्ट थियो, सो म न्युरो साइन्समा पनि धेरै कोर्सहरू गरेँ। र चाहिँ त्यति बेला एउटा अपर्च्युनिटी आयो म कहाँ। द अपर्च्युनिटी वाज द्याट माई एल्डर ब्रदर हु ह्याड ग्रेजुएटेड फ्रम युनिभर्सिटी अफ वासिङटन इन सियाटल, ही वाज जबलेस। Okay, and during his free time he had installed Linux on his PC. Okay, so Linux was a brand new operating system at that time. It was an open source free operating system. He installed it and he got a very simple email system to work on that computer. And त्यति बेला एउटा UUCP भन्ने एउटा protocol हुन्थ्यो for exchanging emails. So he got that working, and he was talking to me one day and he told me, Dileep, you know, I set up an email system on my computer. Why don't you send me an email and let's test it out? मैले पठाएँ, काम गर्यो। अनि मैले उसलाई भने तिमी के बसिरहेछौ, तिमी नेपालमा गएर सुरु गर न यो, just take it and go start it. He said, no, I'm not interested. होइन, म नेपाल फर्किन चाहन्न। But that thing stuck with me.
Right.
होइन, that idea stuck with me that why not do this in Nepal? So So I decided that this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to learn how this is done, and I'm going to take this to Nepal and set it up there, and see how it goes from there. And
Right.
and if it doesn't succeed, that's okay. But at least I'm going to give it a try. So that is something that I had a strong determination to do.
Right.
So then I spent my junior year doing this. So I somehow managed to save money to get a computer. Modems were very expensive back then. Computers were horrendously expensive as well. I managed to convince my college to give me a $3,500 grant to do my senior thesis research. त्यो पैसा पनि मैले यसैमा लगानी गरेँ हैन. अब रिसर्च पछि आएर नेपालमा अरूबाट गराएँ हैन, किन रिसर्चको त मलाई थिस त सबमिट गर्नु थियो. But I somehow managed to get everything together, learn the technology. That Linux didn't work. I had to use another operating system at that time called IBM OS2, which was the first true multi-tasking operating system available for the PC. त्यो सबै गरेर in the summer of 1995 मैले आएर सर्भिस सुरु गरिदिएँ हैन. So I think the takeaway is that I decided I will do it. I thought it was a great idea, and I was willing to risk it out.
Right. अनि नेपालमा आएर सुरु गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ नि, सो कतिजनाले चाहिँ ट्रेडिसनली दिलीप दाईको अहिलेको स्टोरी हेर्दा चाहिँ यो एउटा अग्रवाल फ्यामिलीको कनेक्टेड वेल टु डु होइन त्यो खालको सेटअपबाट गर्नुभयो होला सोच्नुहुन्छ. तर तपाईँको कहानी सुन्दाखेरि त कम्प्युटर किन्ने पैसा थिएन होइन. तपाईँको अरू मैले इन्टरभ्यू सुन्दाखेरि त कलेज पनि तपाईँले एउटा ठाउँबाट अर्को ठाउँमा जानुपर्ने अवस्था थियो. इट वाजन्ट इजी फर यु इभन इन द युएस होइन. र यहाँ तपाईँले इभन प्रोफेसनली पनि यो पढ्दै आएको होइन भन्नुभयो नि होइन. सो त्यो सबै चुनौतीहरूसहित तपाईँ नेपालमा आउनुभयो होइन. भन्नुको मतलब त यहाँ त्यो चुनौतीहरू त छोडेन होला. यहाँ यो कम्पनी सुरु गर्नलाई सेटअप गर्नलाई त गाह्रो थियो होला. त्यो सेटअप गर्दा चाहिँ कस्तो रहँदा अनुभव तपाईँको नेपालमा?
ओके, अब सिस्टम वाज क्वाइट सिम्पल होइन. सिस्टममा एउटा कम्प्युटर थियो र एउटा मोडेम थियो होइन, अथवा दुईवटा मोडेम थियो. त्यति बेलाको सबभन्दा ठुलो चुनौती के थियो भने नेपाल टेलिकमको टेलिफोन लाइन होइन. I mean, I don't know if you remember, maybe you're too young, but back then you didn't get telephone lines easily. होइन,
कुर्नु पर्थ्यो, लामो समय कुर्नु पर्थ्यो.
मन्त्रीको तोक चाहिन्थ्यो अथवा OIT भन्ने हुन्थ्यो. I don't know what the acronym stands for, but you could pay something like 30,000 rupees at that time and get a telephone line instantly. होइन. But that was a huge amount of money. 30,000 rupees back then would be equivalent to maybe like 15 lakh rupees today. So my biggest limitation was how would I get these telephone lines? Now, fortunately, my father had a research lab, as I said, and he had a fax line. And fax त सधैँ आउँदैन नि. So मैले त्यही फ्याक्सको नम्बर चाहिँ लाइन चोरेर त्यसबाट इन्टरनेट सेवा सुरु गरिदिएँ. Because of that, I got a lot of flack from my father. My father would get really upset. मेरो फ्याक्स आएन. किन आएन भने त्यो फ्याक्सको लाइन चाहिँ फ्याक्स मसिनबाट झिकेर दिलीपले त आफ्नो मोडेमा हालिदिएर रहेछ.
जुगाड इनोभेसन
होइन. And so the main challenges I faced were, my father was not happy with what I was doing, because his aspiration for me was that I should have a PhD in biochemistry. I should be a scholar, not somebody who's trying to do something weird in Nepal. And especially business.
And यो चाहिँ त्यतिखेरको कुरा हो. This was like 90s. जब चाहिँ entrepreneur भन्ने शब्द पनि भर्खर मान्छेले सुन्दै थियो होला.
अब त्यो entrepreneur भन्ने कुरा त it was synonymous with being a crook. It still is to some extent. So my father was quite disappointed that I was not that I'm digressing. I'm digressing from the chosen path, the right path, towards this path that is riddled with, let's say, materialism and hardship, and uncertainty, and not respectable in the eyes of society. But I was driven to do it. It was something that I had to do. I had to prove that this is possible, and it can be done. So I was single-mindedly determined on that path.
Right. अन्त यो अब अहिले दाइले के इनोभेसन गर्ने त्यो बारेमा कुरा गरौँला तर यो सुरु गर्नको लागि एउटा एकदम महत्त्वपूर्ण पार्ट भनेको त लगानी हो नि त होइन धेरै जसो नेपालमा उद्यमीहरूलाई गाह्रो हुने भनेको अहिले एउटा लगानी नै छ होइन अब गाउँघरतिर अर्कै किसिमको चुनौती होला अर्बन मार्केट चुनौती होला तर लगानी त लगानी नै हो होइन सो तपाईँको लागि चाहिँ त्यो कस्तो भयो लाइक तपाईँले त्यो इनिसियल फन्डिङ कहाँबाट जुटाउनु भयो के गर्नुभयो
सो मेरो चाहिँ इनिसियल फन्डिङ मेरै सेभिङ्स थियो होइन र चाहिँ मैले यो जुन मेरो कलेजले मलाई थिसिस रिसर्च गर्नलाई होइन पैसा जुन दिएको थियो होइन सो कलेजको हिस्ट्रीमा दे वुड गिभ $2,500 तर द्याट ह्याड टु बी स्पेन्ट इन अमेरिका आई गट अ वेभर द्याट माई फादर हेज अ रिसर्च ल्याब and I want to go home, so they gave me a waiver to go and do it in Nepal. Plus I managed to convince them to give me another $1,000 for travel. So $35 पाएँ मैले त्यो सबै मैले खन्याइदिएँ यसमा हैन
पहिले एन्टरप्रेन्योरल ट्याक्टिक्स त धेरै ठाउँमा प्रयोग
गर्नै पर्यो हैन so this is all like जुगाड I think when you live in America as a poor student you figure all these things out हैन because you have to figure it out otherwise you can't survive. So yeah, अनि यहाँ चाहिँ I asked one of my father's students to do that research for me because I didn't have time for it. So so त्यो लगानी चाहिँ मेरो लागि चाहिँ त्यति बेला ठुलो पैसा थियो because it would have probably been in the tune of maybe $7,000-8,000 हैन but I didn't need any more money after that. I was very lucky because the business that I selected was giving me enough cash flow.
Self-propelling by this.
Self-propelling by this.
How? Tell us more. Like, what does that mean?
What does that mean is that Titi Bela chai the trend was set by Mercantile, who won the race by 3 months in starting the service in Nepal, and the service was charged. It was only email, and the service was charged by how large the email is you are sending or receiving. So the charge was by kilobytes. The size. So per kilobyte ko euta charge huन्थ्यो because the expense was the telephone line connection that was established when you needed to exchange the emails between Nepal and the US. And that connection was made over a live telephone call. So त्यति बेला टेलिफोन कलको पैसा नेपालबाट 150 रुपैयाँ मिनेट करिब थियो, US बाट $1 कै थियो हैन. So that was the expense. So if the email was large, it would consume more time on the telephone line and a bigger bill. So it was all data size based billing. And the customers initially were INGOs, private businesses that had international trade, travel agencies, PCOs, which don't exist anymore, but you had these personal communication offices where you could go and type your email and send it.
Right.
So these were our customers and they were happy with the service and they paid us. So cash flow ko problem thiena, and we used to sell these modems. Modems त्यति बेला नेपालमा पाइदैन थियो. And we made good profit on the modems.
Got it.
And so we were able to sustain our business with the cash flows that we were generating.
So niche एउटा customer group तपाईले भेटाउनु भयो.
हामीले एउटा niche customer भेटायौं because we were differentiating ourselves in a way.
Yeah, that's true. Because you're त्यतिखेर त Mercantile भन्नु पनि त Mercantile मा फेरि it's not just the ISP नि Mercantile comes with a big name अरु प्रोडक्ट्सहरु अब यहाँको एउटा मात्रै प्रोडक्ट छ उहाँको मल्टिपल प्रोडक्ट्स. So how did that work? कसरी चाहिँ कम्पिट गर्नुभयो त्यतिखेर?
So हाम्रो लागि चाहिँ ठुलो चुनौती त्यति बेला के थियो भने how do we demonstrate to customers that we are a credible, reliable provider of their email service and not a fly-by-night operation. Okay. So doing that was very challenging initially because I didn't have an office. I worked from my home. Okay. My infrastructure was basically a small computer with a modem sitting next to it, right? In a dingy room in my house.
Balkuma.
Right? त्यसको बाहिर म एउटा टेबल राखेर बस्थेँ हैन. So if somebody wanted to meet us, that's where they would come. Okay. So if you were a private user of our services, you did not care as much usko office kaha cha, kasto dekhincha, ke chaina. As long as it worked, you were happy. And we went overboard in providing service to our customers. To give you an example, Mercantile required their customers to bring their computer to their office, and there they would install the email software. Or if they had a problem, then they would bring the computer to their office for troubleshooting.
Right.
At times they would tell them, please leave your computer here, pachi aera linu hola. Now for most people, especially foreigners, the expat community, that was not palatable, that I should leave my computer with my private information on it at somebody's office. We reversed that. We never asked them to do that. We went and did the installations. So we set up that trend in Nepal of on the call at home customer service. Ma afai jante, because I was the guy. So I used to go to these customers and imagine this guy who's just passed out from America coming to their house and setting up email. They were super impressed.
A young man.
Yeah, super impressed. So word of mouth bate, we used to make a lot of customers. But again, the big organizations, especially the INGOs, shied away from us because they would want to see what we have. And when they came to see me in my office and see my infrastructure, they were like, oh my God, do we really want to trust these young fellows with our communications?
And what would you say to them when you saw that in their eyes or in what they said?
Well, they would ask me openly, like, what is there to guarantee that you will be here in a month? And I would tell them that, I've come back from the US and I've set this up and I'm determined to do this, but there's nothing more I can say than that. I can't give you a bond that I'll be around after a year or a month.
Right.
But that was just initially. As we increased with our service and we established a track record, more and more companies started signing up. And
so elliptical growth नै भयो है यहाँको त्यो सुरुमा एकदमै गाह्रो तर इलेक्ट्रिकल ग्रोथ नै भयो है
सुरुमा चाहिँ अब हकी स्टिक जुन भन्छ नि हैन त्यो हकी स्टिक ग्रोथ चाहिँ हामीले त्यति बेला भेटेनौं बिकज द इन्डस्ट्री वाज नट ग्रोइङ
नेपालमा डिमान्ड पनि थिएन
डिमान्ड पनि थिएन इट वाज भ्युड एज अ सर्भिस द्याट वाज फर पिपल हु वेयर भेरी वेल्दी हैन or for the INGOs हैन किनभने it was expensive. I mean एउटा किलोबाइटको हामी 10 रुपैयाँ लिन्थ्यौँ मलाई सम्झना छ 8 रुपैयाँ it kept going down 8 रुपैयाँ 7 रुपैयाँ but 10 rupees a kilobyte. I mean it was expensive, and it was expensive because the telephone line was expensive. हैन त्यो कल गर्नै कति महँगो पर्थ्यो त्यति बेला हैन. So it was not for the masses भनौँ न.
Right. 10 रुपैयाँमा त 1 किलो के आउँथ्यो होला. 1 किलोबाइटको कुरा. राइट. अनि सो तपाईले जुन इनोभेसन्सहरु गर्दै जानुभयो नि त अनि तपाईको कम्पिटिटर्सहरुले त्यो इनोभेसन गर्न चाहेन गरेनन्.
अब के छ भने हाम्रो अब अगेन हाम्रो काम गर्ने तरिका चाहिँ was more of what they call जुगाड now. हैन. Why was it जुगाड? Because we were always constrained by the capital we had.
Right.
Okay. Number 2, we had a जुगाड mentality as it is. जुगाड mentality भने के हो भने how can I get by spending or expending the least resources.
Yeah.
And how can I achieve similar results? So we adopted, for example, Linux early on. You know? Okay.
Red Hat.
Nobody in Nepal used Linux at that time. Okay. In fact, my competitors at that time, they told customers, they told the market that, look at Worldlink, they use Linux. It's a freeware operating system. It's not reliable. It's not secure. It's not trustworthy. Look at us. We are using branded, Linux operating systems that cost millions of dollars. So we are more reliable. So us using Linux was used against us. But we chose Linux because it was for the same reason, that it was free and it was reliable and it was scalable and it was customizable.
Right.
We could hack the code and get it to do things that others could not do.
True. त्यसले cost advantage पनि दियो होला नि.
Cost advantage त हाम्रो लगानी धेरै कम थियो.
Right.
So we embrace these technologies. Early on in the dial-up era, things were pretty standard. Dial-up भनेको dial-up. there's not much to innovate there.
Right.
There's not much technologically for us to change.
Yeah.
You know, it's all pretty much standardized globally.
Yeah.
You know, but once the dial-up era was phasing out, that's when we had to start innovating.
Right. Dial-up को कुरामा नि I'll just share this. मेरो कलेजको एक्सेप्टेन्स के वर्ल्डलिङ्क के इन्टरनेटबाट आएको है त्यो टुई गर्थ्यो नि सुरुमा कनेक्ट गर्नलाई नि यु हेभ टु कनेक्ट राइट अनि त्यसपछि गएर चाहिँ सर इमेलहरू आयो कि किन फर्स्ट टाइम मैले होइन त्यो कम्प्युटरमा राखेको हामीहरू जम्सीखेल घरमा अनि वर्ल्डलिङ्कको कनेक्सन थियो अहिले पनि छ अहिले पनि वी आर लोयल कस्टमर्स अनि त्यसपछि गएर त्यहाँ चाहिँ कङ्ग्रेचुलेसन्स भन्ने मेसेज चाहिँ त्यही डायलअपबाट
यु आर लकी मेरो फ्याक्सबाट आयो त्यो फ्याक्स पनि कहाँ हरायो पढ्न पनि गाह्रो भयो हैन
राइट सो टेल अस नाउ डायलअपमा त्यति महँगो होइन त्यतिखेरको लागि पर किलोबाइटको महँगोबाट नेपाल सायद अहिले केही देशहरूमध्ये आउँछ जहाँ इन्टरनेटको प्राइस चाहिँ धेरै कम छ होइन नेपाल इज प्रब्ली लाइक वान अफ द 10 or 20 कन्ट्रिज प्राइस वाइज कतिचोटि त म अमेरिकामा महँगो छ भन्थेँ कि एकताका किनभने त्यहाँबाट यहाँ आउँदाखेरि सस्तो सस्तो हुँदै गएको थियो त्यो कप पनि इलेक्ट्रिकल छ सो टेल अस त्यो फ्रम अ टेक्नोलोजिकल स्ट्यान्ड पोइन्ट सुरुमा डायलअप थियो त्यसपछि के आयो अनि त्यसपछि के आयो
ओके सो डायलअपको एरा चाहिँ आई वुड से इट स्टार्टेड एन्डिङ टुवर्ड्स द एन्ड अफ द 90s होइन एन्ड टुवर्ड्स द अर्ली 2000s globally the trend was to move away from dial-up. Why? Because the demand for higher bandwidth was increasing. You know, सुरुमा text-based body cam हुन्थ्यो, pictures अलि हुन्थ्यो, पछि pictures बढ्दै गयो. You know, web pages were getting more and more heavy. So people were not, the users were not satisfied with the dial-up speed, which was at the most 56 kbps. You know. Till double gun technology आयो, but again they were all very limiting technologies. So the West started moving towards, depending on what infrastructure they had, they started moving towards ADSL, which used the twisted copper cables that telephone companies had rolled out globally. I mean, Nepal Telecom को पनि twisted copper pair अहिलेसम्म पनि थियो. They just phased it out, I think, a year back. त्यसमा चाहिँ equipment राखेर you could push high speeds through it. And that technology was called DSL and later ADSL. The other technology that gained traction globally was DOCSIS, which was based on the copper cables that were deployed by the cable TV operators, the round copper cables. होइन So यी दुईटा टेक्नोलोजीहरू चाहिँ dominant भएर गए in the broadband world. Because the cable TV cables and the twisted copper cables by the telephone companies were already widely deployed globally.
Right.
So नेपालमा चाहिँ त्यो इन्फ्रास्ट्रक्चर भएको नेपाल टेलिकम मात्रै थियो. They had this twisted copper cable that was going into most homes. अनि they were allowing, I mean, we were using dial-up, so in effect we were using their infrastructure, their telephone infrastructure to connect to provide internet services, and that was working quite well. NTC made money because when you called me, my server, to connect, you were paying them a per minute charge, maybe 1 or 2 rupees. So they were making money on the side as well. But when dial-up was getting phased out in Nepal, we approached NTC saying that तपाईको copper cable network छँदैछ, त्यो copper network हामीलाई पनि प्रयोग गर्न दिनुस्, so that we can roll out ADSL to our customers. In the telecom terminology, this is called unbundling. Okay, and unbundling is something widely practiced, enforced globally. In Europe, in America, the regulators enforced the incumbents, the large telephone companies, to make their copper cable available to private service providers, so that the customer has more choices. We lobbied for the same in Nepal, and NTA, our regulator, Nepal Telecom Authority, even ruled कि Nepal Telecom has to unbundle. Means Nepal Telecom ले आफ्नो copper cable निजी सेवा प्रदायकलाई पनि प्रयोग गर्न दिनै पर्छ
भनेर उनीहरूले
राख्यो, रुलिङ नै गर्यो.
And that's interesting. Government अलिकति प्रोग्रेसिभ हुँदैन होइन, अब गभर्मेन्टले इनेबलिङ इन्भाइरोमेन्ट बनाउँदैन भन्छ जुन सुनिन्छ नि, त्यतिखेर त्यो भएन. They were progressive.
They were very progressive. In fact, you know, if I roll back a little bit, in 1998, we started services in 1995, blissfully unaware of what Nepal's laws speak about what we are doing. Maybe I would have landed up in jail, you know, but I didn't even register a company initially. थाहा नै
Right.
थिएन company पनि register
Oh,
गर्नुपर्छ
oh.
भनेर हैन. But it was only in 1997 that the government figured out what we were doing. Okay, and they gave us a license. Okay. In 1997 we got our Telecom Act, and in 1998 NTA was established and NTA gave us a license.
Right.
Okay, so we got a license from NTA to legally provide services.
So एकातिर तपाईहरु पनि तयार हुनुहुन्थेन, अर्कोतिर गभर्नमेन्ट पनि आफै तयार थिएन. तर you kept, it seems like जुगाड गर्ने, leapfrog गर्ने, लागि पर्ने, छाड्दै नछाड्ने, समस्या आएपछि कसरी समाधान गर्ने हैन, अनि त्यो थोरै पैसाबाट धेरै के गर्ने. These are all different like wonderful tactics that you used. अनि it almost seems like त्यसलाई चाहिँ अहिले कम्पेयर गर्दा नि त्यो the fairy tale of an entrepreneur के दाइको कहानीमा त्यो देखिन्छ के. न त भने जेनरली के अब यो अलि ठुल्ठुलो उद्यमीहरू हेर्दा अलिकति ठाँटिलो उद्यमीहरू हुन्छ नि, परिवार एकदम सम्पन्न भएर हैन, त्यो when you land you become the director खालको धेरै देख्छौँ. तर दाइको केसमा चाहिँ you came back, your parents didn't want you back.
They didn't want me back doing what I was doing. Yeah.
Doing what exactly. They wanted you back, but they wanted you in like a PhD scholar को बाटोमा यो के भन्छ कोट अन कोट अल्लारे बाटो हैन, उद्यमशीलता भन्ने बाटोमा चाहनुहुन्थ्यो. So
but let me cut you a little bit, because before you ask, I wanted to point out how progressive our country really was. Okay, so this Telecom Act that came out in Nepal and the regulator that was established was at that time the most progressive in South Asia. Okay, and let me tell you why. At that
97, 98 को कुरा
time,
okay. Most progressive.
So this is the time when our Congress government, we had a Congress government in our country. We had our elections. Girija Prasad Koiralako government थियो. A lot of reforms happened in our country during that time. The banks were set up, for example.
Right.
And one of the things also came at that time was the Telecom Act.
The liberalization को उ थियो है
त्यतिखेर. And mind you, the Telecom Act that was that came out that time has still not been replaced. So this is how much lethargy has been introduced in our country after that golden era of the late 90s in our country. So one of the big liberalizations that Nepal did was they allowed private companies like Worldlink to set up a satellite dish, VSAT bhन्छ त्यसलाई. So we were allowed to set up a satellite dish, connect directly to a satellite and access the global telecommunication networks, completely bypassing Nepal Telecom. Okay, and that had not happened in any country.
That's
in South
monumental.
Asia. Monumental. Okay, and even the regulator, I still remember Bhupraj Pandeji हुनुहुन्थ्यो. He was the first chairman of NTA. Extremely progressive and aggressive guy.
Right.
Extremely pro private sector. L Dileep ji के गर्नुपर्छ भन्नुस्. We'll get it done.
Right.
And he did, in his 4 or 5 years, he did more than anything that has happened in the 20 years after him. That is how progressive they were at that time.
So you think that was because of the person, or it was because South Asia was in a momentum, अथवा नेपालको politics were?
I just think Nepal I think the leadership in Nepal at that time was politically was very, very progressive.
Right.
Very, very geared towards bringing Nepal to the forefront.
Right.
And open-minded.
Yeah.
I mean, the kind of reforms that happened in those few years has not happened in the last 20 years.
So, यदि late 90s मा त्यो political mindset ले हैन यस्तो catapult गर्न सक्छ भने अहिले गर्यो भने त कहाँ पुग्न सक्थ्यो होला है देश भन्ने कुरा आउँछ. मलाई त्यसैमा नि दाइ अब अहिले तपाईको कुरा सुन्दै आउँदाखेरि कतिवटा यहाँको नवप्रवर्तन इनोभेसन्सको कुराहरु पनि सुनियो. Take us to तपाईको जर्नीमा the darkest moment के. कुनै त्यस्तो बेला पनि त भयो होला नि, I want to give up. मलाई पुग्यो, म अब सक्दिन हैन, मेरो साथीहरु यस्तो गरिरहेछ उस्तो गरिरहेछ, म यस्तो गर्न सक्थे उस्तो गर्न सक्थे, यो देशमा भन्दा अरु कुरा पो गर्नुपर्ने त्यस्तो मोमेन्ट थियो दाइको जीवनमा?
I mean, everyone has that, right? सो मेरो नेपाल फर्किने मेन उद्देश्य चाहिँ वर्ल्डलिङको स्थापना गर्नु थियो
हजुर
होइन, इन्टरनेट सेवा प्रवाह गर्नु थियो। र त्यो सेवा दिँदै जाँदा मैले के भेटेँ भने इन्टरनेट सेवाको विस्तार गर्दाखेरि, इन्टरनेट सेवा नयाँ ठाउँहरूमा हामीले लग्दाखेरि त्यसको चाहिँ धेरै ठुलो डेभलपमेन्ट इम्प्याक्ट पनि हुँदो रहेछ होइन। त्यो मैले चाहिँ फर्स्ट ह्यान्ड मैले एक्सपिरियन्स गर्न पाएँ होइन। in the early 2000s, when we started expanding out of Kathmandu, we set up offices in Pokhara, Biratnagar, होइन, नेपालगञ्ज, all over. र त्यहाँ गएर सेवाको विस्तार गर्दाखेरि I realized that this does have a huge impact. It's not just about money now, होइन, it's about developing the country. It's about having a huge impact, होइन. And that realization is what propelled me to continue, होइन, despite whatever challenges I was facing or I would face in the future.
What is the biggest challenge that you journey with? What was the darkest one?
So I think the first darkest one was in 2007, I believe it was Gyanendra took over the country, and one of the first things that he did was shut down the internet. Okay, so we were compelled to turn off our services, and I remember that because my elder daughter was just born and my brother was visiting from America, and it was my birthday. Okay, so we shut down the internet, but internet mein DNS bhanne hundo rahecha, domain name service. Okay, and you don't want to shut that down for the whole of Nepal. .np domain ko DNS resolution globally hunu parcha. So we had kept that DNS on. I remember clearly the army came to my house and they threatened me that tapaile ta band garnu bhaina rahecha, haina.
They can find out.
Maybe they found out through someone that the DNS is still on. Basically, we hadn't like pulled the plug on the VSAT which connected us to the internet, and threatened me very aggressively that तपाईको छाता पनि लगिदिन्छौँ, तपाईलाई पनि लगिदिन्छौँ, गएर तुरुन्त बन्द गर्नुस्. So then with a heavy heart I told my guys, just pull the cable now, हैन. अनि मलाई लाग्यो अब पुग्यो, अब दाइसँगै अब अमेरिका फर्किनु पर्ला जस्तो, अब यस्तै भइराख्यो भने त, हैन. I mean, because we had fixed costs. Okay, it's like how entrepreneurs felt during the pandemic.
Right.
Staffहरु त छ नि, भाडा त तिर्नै पर्छ. We have a huge monthly cost in terms of paying for this connectivity. Satellite को, हैन. अब त्यो त सबै पे गर्नै पर्यो. यहाँ रेभेन्यू त सुखा हुन्छ अब, हैन. But you know, as God would have it, in 7 days, in 1 week, they came to me. The same people came to me. आदेश आएछ माथिबाट तुरुन्तै जोड्नुस्, तुरुन्तै सुचारू गर्नु पर्यो. मैले के भएन, तुरुन्तै सुचारू गर्नुस्. ओके, सुचारू गरिदिऊ. So later on, what I found out is that there was a huge drop in remittance. Banking had completely ground to a halt. Remittance was zero. So the finance minister, I don't know who it was at that time, he was able to convince Gyanendra that if you keep the internet off, the company is going to go south. The economy will shut down. So please go and turn it on. So those 7 days were very difficult for me, because I thought this is now done.
Right.
Because we had heard other countries do the same thing.
Yeah.
Pakistan ruma bhaya thiyo. So that was one that I remember. The other one was, we went through this period from, I would say, 2008 to 2014,
right,
where we really didn't know what we're doing. That time was spent by me lobbying the government to give me spectrum, which is frequency to run WiMAX services.
Oh.
See, the thing is, after the unbundling of Nepal Telecom was forced by the government to unbundle, but Nepal Telecom never heeded to it. Nepal Telecom le kaile gardai garena. So they could openly defy the regulators' order, because they were state-owned.
Right.
So no one could force them. So they never unbundled. So when they didn't unbundle, what happened is Nepal Telecom started ADSL. So Nepal Telecom started making customers, but we didn't have a technology. So we did jugaad after that. Fixed wireless garyo, tyo pani unlicensed spectrum ma jugaadai thyo. We built a cable network. which was again jugaad.
Hazur.
And I was always looking for the technology that was globally proven, stable, and scalable like dial-up.
Hazur.
And WiMAX seemed to be a good solution. So I lobbied a lot with the government. I managed to get the government to allocate 30 megahertz of spectrum for private ISPs. But again, it was never auctioned. It was never put out for auction. And so
I remember meeting you in 2009. You were not happy with the government.
Yeah.
I remember that.
So just ती गर्दैमा चाहिँ वर्षहरू बित्यो हैन, and we tried hard. And then in 2012 or 11 and 12 ma चाहिँ we had a big raid by the Department of Revenue Investigation. And that basically put me in this position where I was thinking that कुन दिन देश छोडेरै भाग्नु पर्ला अब.
न तपाईलाई स्पेक्ट्रम दिन्छ राम्ररी, न तपाईलाई त्यो अनबन्डलिङ गर्छ, रेड गरिदिन्छ बरु.
रेड गर्छ हैन. And so it was a very dark moment trying to figure out what to do next. And at that time I was talking to some of my close friends, and what I understood is that if you're faced with a difficult situation, a life-threatening situation, and if you can accept the outcome, like what is the worst thing that can happen to me? So people like you and me, we have the confidence to go and make it anywhere in the world. कम से कम पढाइ त राम्रो गरेका छौ नि, grades त राम्रै ल्याएको छौ. So I always had this confidence that if everything goes south, I can go back to America, get into a graduate program, re-educate myself, get a job. हैन, त्यति बेलासम्मको लागि McDonald'sमा पनि काम गर्यो भने गर्न सक्छु. पहिला गरेको पनि छु. हैन. So we don't have any problems with that. So I figured out that that's the worst case scenario for me. That worst case scenario doesn't sound that bad to me. I lose everything in Nepal. I leave with zero. I came with zero. I leave with zero, and I start a new life. But that scenario doesn't sound that bad. But त्यो scenario भन्दा पहिला जे गर्नुपर्छ म गर्छु यहाँ. So I lived it through, thinking that the worst case scenario isn't that bad. Fortunately, I was able to get out of all of these hurdles and emerge even stronger. And that's when I realized, and I chose my tagline to be, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So in life, we have to embrace adversity. If you try to always tread down the easiest path, you will never really strengthen your character and spirit. It's only when you get put through very challenging, difficult times that you actually build character and strength.
Right. And this is the part that म अहिले विशेष गरिकन सरी क्षेत्रमा के यो पेशेन्स भन्ने कुरा नि, पेशेन्स एन्ड पर्सिस्टेन्स भन्ने कुरामा यो उद्यमशीलता एउटा लहर जस्तो के दाइ. एनीबडी क्यान बिकम एन एन्टरप्रेन्योर सायद हैन, तर जो पनि उद्यमी हैन त्यो अनि 1-2 वर्ष गर्छ छोड्छ त्यो खालको इन्भाइरोमेन्ट देखिरहेछौँ कि. अनि तपाईको यो कहानीमा चाहिँ के देखिन्छ भने हैन लागि पर्नुपर्छ, यो त कहिले सकिँदैन, एन्डलेस ब्याटल हैन हो भन्ने बुझिन्छ. What's your message to these young people who are starting these enterprises? कसरी चाहिँ सोच्नु पर्ने रहेछ त?
मेरो विचारमा सबभन्दा पहिला त I'll give some theory, which everybody hears, but I think it's still important, is that you have to really figure out what is the problem you're solving. Or what are you improving? त्यही आइडिया छैन भने के को उद्यमी बनेको त हैन. पहिला त त्यो क्लियर हुनु पर्यो नि कि what am I trying to solve or what am I trying to improve. An entrepreneur at the end of the day has to solve a problem. Or has to make something easier.
It's not just about making money.
It's not about making money. Making money should be like the 3rd, 4th, 5th thing in the line.
Or going to panel discussions.
त्यो त पछि आइ नै हाल्छ नि.
Exactly.
If I make your life simpler, easier, or solve your problem, I will make money anyway. You'll pay me. We have seen now these behemoths like Facebook. They don't charge anything to their users, but they make horrendous profits. There's always a way to make money if you're solving a problem or addressing a need. So त्यो पहिला clear हुनुपर्छ people. If you're getting into entrepreneurship to make money, you should go and get a degree, become a computer scientist, become go get a degree and do a job. होइन you'll
ठुलो
make money.
कम्पनीमा गएर काम गरे भयो
काम गरे भइहाल्यो नि त्यो यो entrepreneurको काम पैसा कमाउने मात्र होइन
डेभलपमेन्ट सेक्टरमा काम गरे हजुर
होइन that's the first thing I want to say. The second thing is that once you believe that there is a problem you can solve, you have to become the best at it, and that should be a constant and persistent effort. यो होइन कि आज गरे सिद्धियो होइन no, you have to continuously improve your
best at it.
You have to be the best. You cannot stop until you are the best in the world at that.
And you don't stop there. You still then
you have to keep innovating.
Go to the next level, होइन?
Because if you don't do that, then you will never be successful. होइन? If you do that, then people will see it and they will value you and they'll pay you and you'll make money. होइन? So I think these are very basic things that any entrepreneur needs to think about and address before they even decide to become an entrepreneur. होइन? अब त्यो सबै गरिसकेपछि what you need to understand as an entrepreneur is that by the very nature of what I just said, you need to be extremely patient and persistent. होइन? अब त्यो patience or persistence छैन भने again you're in the wrong field. होइन? किनभने I tell my own story to people that 27 वर्ष त अहिले 27 वर्ष भयो. My Worldlink's actual growth only happened since 2019. Okay.
4 वर्ष.
Okay, and if I try to stretch that from 2015. Okay, so 8 years. The only growth we have had is in 8 years.
So 2 दशकको त तपाईको रगत पसिनाको लगानी हो, त्यसको फल तपाईले अहिले देখিरहनु भएको छ.
त्यो लगानी हो अथवा बर्बादी हो मलाई थाहा छैन है. But it is, we were just dabbling. We were just trying to figure out what to do. We were trying to figure out how do we build this network? How do we build a network? How do we figure out how to deliver service? How do we keep ourselves afloat? You know, how do we pass through challenging times? How do we pass through, you know, we went through, for example, the Jan Yuddha. How do we pass through those challenging days?
Governance challenges.
So 2 decades were spent on that.
Right.
Just trying to figure it out.
So अब you know त्यतिखेरदेखि अहिलेसम्म ल्यान्डस्केप चेन्ज भएको छ, लाइक नेपालको यो एन्टरप्रेन्योरियल ल्यान्डस्केप छ नि, किनभने यहाँले सुरु गर्दाखेरि न परिवार तयार थियो, न मार्केट नै तयार थियो, न ब्याङ्कहरू तयार थियो होला होइन, देखि अहिलेसम्म आउँदाखेरि एन्ड कम टु द बिग इन्भेस्टमेन्ट द्याट यु रिसेन्टली रिसिभ्ड, धेरै चेन्ज भएको छ नि त होइन. सो हाउ हेज द ल्यान्डस्केप चेन्ज्ड, अनि क्यान एन एन्टरप्रेन्योर डु दिस इन लेस टाइम? तपाईँलाई 2 दशक लाग्यो होइन, अहिले त्यसलाई घटाउने वातावरण छैन भने के चाहिँ गर्नुपर्ने हो यो इकोसिस्टममा?
अब हेर्नुहोस्, a lot of modern or knowledge or people would say that you have to pivot. भन्छ नि होइन, यो काम गर्यो फेल भयो पिभट गर. अब मैले पिभट गरेको भए maybe I wouldn't be doing this business, because 20 years is a long time.
Very long time.
It's a long time. So I would have probably pivoted to America. भएन छोडिदियो, बन्द गरौँ, अमेरिका जाउँ होइन, यो त that's the easiest path नि होइन. And you and I, we both have so many friends who are there doing well, होइन, having a great lifestyle होइन. के यो धुलोमा बसिराख्ने होइन, यो गाली खाएर बस्ने होइन. मलाई त one of the biggest turn-offs for me is to read social media comments against my company. So if we have 3.5 million users today, even if 0.1% of them are unhappy, they're unhappy, that's enough to create a storm on social media, because the other 99.9% will never express any gratitude. They'll never come out and say, malai ta ramrai bhako cha. There are very few people who do that. So sometimes I read those and I'm like, oh God, what am I doing? But I've stopped reading now. I don't even use social media anymore. Okay, because I view it as a waste of my time. I just go to LinkedIn to learn professional network. Social media use gardina. Anyway,
you probably also have a team that's doing that for you.
Yeah, there's a whole team that handles Worldlink social media. But there are many things here to pull you down. Many things that will pull you down. But if you believe in what you're doing, if you believe that you're making an impact, if you believe that the service or product you're offering is having an impact, a positive impact on people and their lives, then you will always have the motivation to continue.
Yeah. ताइले अघि भनेको त्यो 2टा पीमा तेस्रो पी पनि भन्नु महत्त्वपूर्ण छ जसलाई. यो पेसेन्स र पर्सिस्टेन्सको साथसाथै द प्यासन
Yeah.
the passion to solve problems that make a difference in the lives of people.
Yeah.
होइन
Yeah.
so that the happy faces drive you.
Yeah.
तर म कता पनि जान चाहन्थेँ भने नि त यो इकोसिस्टम चाहिँ अहिले के बेटर भइरहेछ एउटा उद्यमीको लागि.
Yes, so definitely. I mean, if I look at now versus then, the ecosystem has improved many fold. And why I would say that is, number one, that first of all, the way entrepreneurship and entrepreneurs are viewed, होइन, जुन पब्लिक पर्सेप्सन छ त्यो चाहिँ सकारात्मक हुँदै गएको छ. अहिले पनि त्यहाँसम्म पुगेको छैन जहाँ हुनुपर्ने हो. होइन, जस्तै हामी छिमेकी मुलुक भारतलाई हेर्ने हो भने अथवा चाइनाले हेर्ने हो भने होइन, 20 वर्ष अगाडि त्यहाँ पनि उद्यमी भनेको चाहिँ यो लुटेरा नै हो भनेर ठान्थे. होइन, तर चाइना र इन्डियामा पनि परिवर्तन भइसकेको छ. अब त्यो लेभलमा पुगिसकेको छैन जहाँ अमेरिका छ. होइन, अमेरिकामा त पपुलर उद्यमीज लाइक बिल गेट्स होइन or Elon Musk, they're celebrated.
कलेजै ग्रेजुएट गर्नु पर्दैन.
होइन, they're celebrated probably more than the US president. होइन, भनेपछि त्यहाँसम्म चाहिँ हामी पुगेका छैनौँ, तर पहिलाभन्दा धेरै राम्रो छ.
सो यहाँ उद्यमीलाई हेर्ने तरिका बेटर छ.
डेफिनेटली इम्प्रुभ भयो त्यसमा.
अनि आर देयर अनि गभर्नेन्सको कुराहरू गऱ्यो नि त हामीले होइन. देयर आर सम गभर्नेन्स challenges which are very much about who is in political power. And यहाँले एउटा एपिसोडको कुरा पनि गर्नुभयो होइन. It's also about policies, how favorable they are. अनि जस्तै यहाँ त्यो स्याटेलाइट कनेक्सन गर्न पाउनु भनेको धेरै प्रोग्रेसिभ पोलिसी थियो होइन. तर 1990 को एन्डतिर आएको पोलिसी अहिलेसम्म चेन्ज भएको छैन पनि भन्नु भएको छ होइन. सो फ्रम ए पोलिसी पर्सपेक्टिभ के दाइ, वेयर आर थिङ्स के चाहिँ भयो भने चाहिँ यो यहाँ जस्तै धेरै मान्छेहरूले चाहिँ क्याटालिटिकली अगाडि बढ्न सक्थ्यो होला.
मेरो विचारमा सबभन्दा पहिलो कुरा पुकार के छ भने बिजनेसम्यान अथवा अन्टरप्रेन्योरलाई हेर्ने दृष्टिकोण चाहिँ मौखिक रूपले ब्युरोक्रेसी र सरकारले चाहिँ राम्रो भने तापनि मनमा चाहिँ ट्रस्ट अहिलेसम्म बनिसकेको छैन होइन. अहिले पनि हेर्ने नजरिया चाहिँ सकारात्मक छैन होइन. अहिले पनि सोचाइ के छ भने यिनीहरूले त पायो भने देशै बेचेर खालान् जस्तो.
त्यस्तो किन भएको दाइ? व्हाई इज दैट द केस?
आई थिङ्क द्याट्स लेगेसी. आई थिङ्क द्याट इज लेगेसी फ्रम द ओल्ड.
भन्नाले
लेगेसी भन्नाले यो सोचाइ 10-15 वर्ष अगाडिको सोचाइ हो होइन. आजका युवा उद्यमीहरू जसलाई म भेट्छु उनीहरूको चाहिँ सोचाइ, उनीहरू पनि बाहिर बसेर आएका हुन् होइन, चाहे त्यो धनी परिवारका होस् या नयाँ पुस्ताका हुन् होइन. देयर थिङ्किङ इज भेरी भेरी प्रोग्रेसिभ
होइन. वा यो गाउँ घरका त्यहीँ बसेर गरिरहेको उद्यमीहरू पनि भेरी
प्रोग्रेसिभ होइन. उनीहरूको सोचाइ चाहिँ अब ट्याक्स छलेर अथवा भनौँ न गुणस्तरहीन सामान बेचेर पैसा कमाउने होइन होइन. दे रियली वान्ट टु डु समथिङ होइन. एन्ड द्याट इज भेरी इन्करेजिङ. एन्ड मलाई विश्वास छ कि सायद आउने दशकमा होइन ब्युरोक्रेसीले पनि यो कुरालाई हेरेर आफ्नो नजर फेर्छ होला.
हजुर. अनि मलाई त्यहाँ चाहिँ त्यो यो ट्रस्ट डेफिसिट चाहिँ दाइले भन्नुभएको यो पुरानो एउटा सायद बिजनेस गर्ने तरिका थियो, त्यसले गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ एउटा
पहिला चाहिँ हाम्रो इकोनोमी 20 वर्ष अगाडि चाहिँ हाम्रो इकोनोमी स्मग्लिङ बेस्ड इकोनोमी थियो. हेर्नुहोस् होइन, द पिपल हु मेड मनी आर दोज हु स्मगल्ड गुड्स अक्रस द बोर्डर टु इन्डिया. ओके, एन्ड एभ्रीबडी who is anybody at that time was doing it.
Right.
Okay, there are very few people who can say no, I was not doing it.
Right.
Everybody was doing it because that was the way to make money.
Right.
It was it was considered kosher. It was considered okay. हैन, त्यसमा गलत केही पनि छैन हैन. तर अहिले आएर चाहिँ नयाँ पुस्ताका उद्यमीहरूले चाहिँ त्यस्ता क्रियाकलापहरू रोचाउँदैनन् हैन. बरु उनीहरूको सोचाइ कस्तो छ भने मैले यस्तो काम गरेर पैसा कमाउनु छ भने म बरु विदेशमै बस्छु.
हजुर,
मसँग त त्यो अप्सन छ नि हैन. आई डोन्ट निड टु बी ब्याक इन नेपाल. एन्ड इफ आई हेभ टु कम ब्याक टु नेपाल एन्ड डु दिस काइन्ड अफ एक्टिभिटिज एन्ड अर्न मनी, आई माइट एज वेल नट लिभ हियर. होइन. सो देयर हेज बिन अ मेजर क्लिन अप इन माई ओपिनियन in the business environment, but the bureaucracy and the government has still not recognized this. So hence I said that maybe it will take some time for that perception to
राइट
change.
सो त्यो इन्भाइरोमेन्ट भयो भने चाहिँ सायद त्यो पोलिसिजको पनि एक्सलरेटेड वेबाट आउला होइन बट दिस इज अल्सो वेयर रिप्रेजेन्टेटिभ अर्गनाइजेसन्स लाइक अब सिएनआई अथवा एफएनसिसिआई अथवा एफवेन उहाँहरूको भूमिका यही नै हो नि होइन कसरी अनि सो युर पार्ट अफ आई अन्डरस्ट्यान्ड सिएनआई होइन त्यो बारेमा भनिदिनुहोस् न तपाईँहरूले थ्रु सिएनआई यो पोलिसी इन्भाइरोमेन्ट बनाउनुको लागि के गरिरहनु भएको छ
हेर्नुहोस् सिएनआई जस्ता अर्गनाइजेसनको मेन काम चाहिँ लबिङ गर्ने हो इन्डस्ट्रीको लागि र चाहिँ अवेरनेस क्रिएट गर्ने हो होइन सो सिएनआईले चाहिँ विभिन्न कार्यक्रमहरू गर्ने गरेको छ टु सेन्सिटाइज द गभर्मेन्ट एज वेल एज द प्राइभेट सेक्टर द इन्डस्ट्री अन द च्यालेन्जेस द्याट बोथ साइड्स फेस यस्तो होइन कि सरकारसँग जादुको छडी छ होइन that they can just wave this wand and solve all the problems. The government has its own limitations and many restrictions that they have, that the private sector also needs to recognize. So CNI also does work to sensitize the private sector on that, as well as to sensitize the government that this is what the private sector is facing. Okay, and also look at the economy, where what can be done to stimulate the economic growth, and trying to lobby for policies with the government to help the industries. So CNI is basically for industries. You know, how do we catapult, how do we expand Nepal's industrial growth? And this सम्बन्धित चाहिँ awareness र lobbying activities
so ट्रस्टलाई चाहिँ ब्रिज गर्नु भएको छ मलाई यो सबै कुराहरू सुन्दै जाँदा चाहिँ के पनि लाग्यो भने नि फ्रम अ गभर्नेन्स स्ट्यान्ड पोइन्ट कि जब हामीहरूले चाहिँ यो गरेको क्रियाकलापहरूले देशमा आर्थिक समृद्धि ल्याउँछ देशको जिडिपी बढाउँछ देशमा बढी पैसा आउँछ भनेपछि चाहिँ त्यो इन्टरनेट पनि एक हप्ताभित्रै सुचारू हुनसक्छ अनि त्यस्तै गरिकन अब यहाँ जुन जुन पोलिसिजहरू चाहिन्छ त्यो पोलिसिजहरू पनि ल्याउने काम हुनसक्छ भन्ने कुरा पनि सायद होला होइन बिकज अहिले देशलाई एकदमै ठुलो आवश्यकता भनेको त आर्थिक फन्डको नै हो नि वी हेभ अब कन्स्टिट्युसन पनि चेन्ज भयो कतिवटा सोसियल मुभमेन्ट्सहरूबाट होइन कतिवटा लज एक्ट्सहरू पनि चेन्ज भएको छ महिलाहरूको लागि भनेर युवाहरूको लागि भनेर पोलिटिक्समा पनि वी सिङ पिपल तर अहिले चाहेको भनेको त इकोनोमिक ट्रान्सफर्मेसन नै हो होइन सो त्यो अलिकति जान चाहँदै सो त्यो इकोनोमिक ट्रान्सफर्मेसनको लागि आइसिटी इन्डस्ट्री एउटा अत्यन्तै महत्त्वपूर्ण इन्डस्ट्री भयो देशमा त एग्रिकल्चर पनि बनाएको छौँ टुरिज्म पनि बनाएको छौँ तर यो आइसिटीको इन्डस्ट्री कुड बी द्याट थर्ड ओ मेबी द फर्स्ट होइन इन्डस्ट्री होइन त यहाँलाई के लाग्छ कसरी चाहिँ यो इन्डस्ट्रीले देशलाई फन्डको मार्नलाई सपोर्ट गर्न सक्ला
ओके यसमा देयर टु एस्पेक्ट्स टु दिस है दुईवटा पक्ष छन् यसमा पहिलो पक्ष त के हेर्नु पऱ्यो भने आइटी or ICT or digitization, whatever you want to call it, it's a huge enabler for any country or economy or country or household, होइन it's a huge enabler. So IT को प्रयोग हाम्रै देशमा आवश्यक छ होइन के को लागि होइन to make things more efficient and transparent होइन for the government it's more important, for Worldlink it's important, for your company it's important. If any country, any company wants to improve the way they deliver services, become more efficient, they have to use IT.
कोभिडमा हामीले देख्यौँ त्यो
हामी देख्यौँ होइन सो द्याट इज नन निगोसिएबल अब होइन सो त्यही मात्र गर्नु पर्यो भने पनि नेपालमा आइटीको डिमान्ड ह्युज होइन होइन सो आइ एम नट इभन टकिङ अबाउट द अदर साइड त्यसको अर्को पक्ष के छ भने
इन्फ्रास्ट्रक्चरकै डिमान्डको कुरा
इन्फ्रास्ट्रक्चरको छ होइन आइटी डिजिटाइजेसनको छ होइन अच्छा डिजिटल ट्रान्सफर्मेसन प्रयोग गरिन्छ सो डिजिटल ट्रान्सफर्मेसन अफ नेपाल एज अ कन्ट्री होइन अब नेपाल सरकारले त्यसको अवधारणा निकालेको छ देयर इज अ प्लान होइन द्याट हेज कम आउट डिजिटल नेपाल भन्ने होइन इम्प्लिमेन्टेसन खासै केही भएको छैन अनफोर्चुनेटली तर भेरी लफ्टी एन्ड भेरी एडमायरेबल गोल्स हेभ बिन सेट सो द्याट्स एटलिस्ट अ गुड पार्ट अब के हुन्छ होला
भिजन
छ होइन सो त्यही मात्र गर्नलाई पनि आइटीको ठुलो डिमान्ड छ नेपालमा ओके नाउ द अदर साइड अफ द अदर पक्ष इज द्याट नेपाल इज अ ल्यान्डलक्ड कन्ट्री होइन वी आर स्यान्डविच्ड बिट्विन दिस कन्ट्रिज वी डोन्ट ह्याभ आवर ओन ट्रेड एक्सेस टु पोर्ट्स होइन वी हेभ टु रिलाइ अन इन्डिया होइन सो Nepal can, in my opinion, Nepal can never be a competitive producer of products in the world. Okay, we can never compete with India or China to produce anything unless the raw material is found within our borders. Okay, so if cement भनौँ न, the raw material is within our borders, we can produce it, होइन, and maybe we have an advantage, maybe, होइन, होइन. अब transportation and logistics is very expensive in our country. That makes everything expensive. If we had to export it, it becomes expensive, होइन. So everybody should know, understand, and people recognize that Nepal can never be a manufacturing hub for the world, the way Vietnam is trying to be. Okay, so what do we have then? Okay, then we should probably focus on IT services, which doesn't need transportation of goods or services, which doesn't need transportation networks, which can work over fiber cables. होइन, and
logistical खर्चहरु चाहिँ
केही छैन,
धेरै धेरै थोरै,
हैन, लगानी थोरै छ, हैन,
र एकचोटी लगानी गरेपछि फेरि त्यो धेरै लामो समयसम्म
पुग्यो, किनभने you just need computers, हैन, and you need brains. So that is regarded as a field that can be a promising source of growth, economic growth and exports for Nepal. Unfortunately, it hasn't happened.
Right.
I've been hearing this for the past 20 years, that Nepalma yo potential छ, and countless World Bank studies I have seen. I have been interviewed hundreds of times, but nothing has happened, and it's unfortunate that nothing has happened.
So digital Nepal जुन परिकल्पना नेपाल सरकारले गरेको छ, हैन, जुन चाहिँ फेरि हाम्रो लागि पनि एकदमै महत्त्वपूर्ण छ, एकदमै महत्त्वपूर्ण छ, यहाँ तपाईलाई पनि भन्नु पनि भयो. सो त्यो ठाउँमा जाने क्रममा चाहिँ एउटा मैले देखेको चुनौती भनेको चाहिँ इज अराउन्ड डेटा इन इटसेल्फ के. अब कतिचोटि कसैसँग यसो, हैन, बच्चा भएपछि के डाइपरको कुरा गरेर आउँछ पतिबार मैले, अनि यतातिर फेसबुकमा एड्सहरु आउन थालिसके जस्तो लाग्ने कि कसैले चाहिँ सुन्यो, कसले सुन्यो भने जस्तो लाग्ने कि, हैन. अब एन्ड मोर ओभर लाइक तपाईँले आफ्नै कम्प्युटर अथवा आफ्नै फोनबाट इफ यु हेभ टाइप समथिङ, देन त्यो कमर्सियल एक्टर्सहरू चाहिँ इन्भल्भ भए जस्तो लाग्छ दाइ. इज द्याट ट्रु? आई मिन मैले खास त्यो हाम्रो त्यो मनगढन्ते खालको कहानी भन्छ त्यो हो कि साँच्चीकै नै देयर इज समथिङ इन प्लेस?
अब तपाईँले गुगलमा सर्च गर्नु पर्यो भने त गइसक्यो त. द्याट्स नाउ गुगल्स डेटा इज गुगल्स इन्फर्मेसन अबाउट यु एन्ड दे विल युज द्याट टु रिटार्गेट यु.
राइट. व्हाट अबाउट त्यो कुरा गरेपछि चाहिँ अनि त्यो आउने के एड?
त्यो त नआउनु पर्ने,
त्यो चाहिँ नआउनु पर्ने,
हैन.
राइट. ओके, सो आई गेस द टपिक हियर इज डेटा प्राइभेसी. अनि अब म्यामथ अमाउन्ट अफ ट्राफिक छ नि, अब फेसबुक, इन्स्टा, युट्युब, अनेकन कुराहरू, प्लस मान्छेले आइटीको प्रयोग गरेर सर्भिसेसहरू, होइन, हामीहरू डराउनु पर्ने कारण छ नेपालमा, किनभने यहाँ धेरै कुराहरू फर द फर्स्ट टाइम बाई द फर्स्ट एक्टर्सहरू भइरहेको हुन्छ नि, होइन. यहाँले नै आफ्नो कहानीमा वाट आर वी डुइङ एट वर्ल्डलिङ्क टु प्रोटेक्ट डेटा प्राइभेसी?
Let me be honest with you, we're not doing enough. Okay, and this is one of the areas that we have flagged internally in governance that we need to improve. So what kind of कस्तो खालको डेटा हामीसँग छ त, हैन. सो पहिलो कुरा त के छ भने वर्ल्डलिङ्कले हरेक ग्राहकको केवाइसी गर्नुपर्छ, हैन, ब्याङ्कले गरे जस्तै. So we need to know exactly who you are, where you live. We need to maintain copies of your identification documents. We need to maintain information on where do you live, location. त्यो सबै प्राइभेट तपाईको इन्फर्मेसन हामीसँग हुन्छ,
हजुर,
हैन. त्यो चाहिँ हाम्रो डेटाबेसमा स्टोर्ड हुन्छ. तपाईको कन्ट्याक्ट नम्बर बाहेक बाँकी कुनै पनि डेटा अरू कसैले हेर्न सक्दैन. Okay, means हाम्रो कम्पनीमा कसैले हेर्न सक्दैन, because they don't need to see it. Why would they need to know what is your नागरिकता number, what is your नागरिकता or your passport, हैन. Those are kept for regulatory purposes. In case our regulator NTA ever asks us, हैन, that फलानो user को मलाई information दिनुस्, त्यति बेला हामीले नेपाल सरकार को अथोरिटीलाई दिने कुराहरू
भनेपछि एनटीए हैज द अथोरिटी टु प्लाई, हैज द अथोरिटी टु चेक मैले यो मितिमा चाहिँ के गरेँ, कुन इन्टरनेट ब्राउज गरेँ, कसो कुरा, त्यो छैन. सो उनीहरूले के चाहिँ माग्यो भने तपाईँले दिनुपर्ने हुन्छ त्यसो.
ओके, सो नेपालमा साइबर क्राइम भइराखेको छ, ग्लोबली नै हुन्छ. त्यो साइबर क्राइम हुँदाखेरि चाहिँ हाम्रो दायित्व चाहिँ त्यो साइबर क्राइम हाम्रो नेटवर्क प्रयोग भएर भएको भने हाम्रो प्रयोगकर्ताले गरेको हो भने त्यो प्रयोगकर्ताको इन्फर्मेसन सरकारलाई बुझाउने हो हैन. फर इक्जाम्पल लेट्स से वर्ल्डलिङ्कको कनेक्सन युज गरेर तपाईँले कुनै ब्याङ्कको वेबसाइट ह्याक गर्नुभयो हैन, अथवा कसैलाई तपाईँले थ्रेटनिङ इमेल अथवा मेसेज पठाउनु भयो हैन भने हैन, द गभर्मेन्ट क्यान कम टु अस एन्ड से ल वर्ल्डलिङ्क फलानो मितिको फलानो समयको फलानो सेकेन्डमा हैन यो आइपी एड्रेस हैन, हरेक इन्टरनेटमा हरेक डिभाइसको एउटा एड्रेस हुन्छ, यो एड्रेसको प्रयोगकर्ता को थियो त, त्यो डेटा हामीले 6 महिनासम्म मेन्टेन गर्नुपर्छ. दिस इज रिक्वायर्ड बाई ल अन अस हैन. सो त्यो 6 महिनाको डेटामा हामीले चाहिँ सर्च गरेर ल कसले युज गरे हो त यो 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 आइपी एड्रेस यो बेला को थियो त, ए पुकार, ल पुकार यो फोन नम्बर यो नागरिकता यो भने वी हेभ टु प्रोड्युस द्याट मच.
Right. So content चाहिँ share हुन्न.
Content cannot
IP
get
को
stored
uses
anywhere.
cannot get stored anywhere.
Cannot get stored anywhere. Okay, because it's too much to store. Like that's like that would be like, you know, today in Nepal, each of our user uses approximately 90 to 120 GB every day. Every day, not every month.
Every user 90 GB average.
It's a horrendous amount of data. Imagine.
तपाईको कस्टमर्स त sophisticated भइसक्नु भएको छ.
Sophisticated, हैन. TikTok has made them super sophisticated.
Yeah.
You know? So that's a lot of data to consume, and who's going to store all that? It's just too much information to store.
So you don't store any data.
Nothing gets stored anywhere. No service provider globally stores anything.
Right. So what are the data privacy मा अझै गर्नु छ भन्नु भन्छ. What does that mean?
So data privacy मा अरु गर्नुपर्ने मैले के देख्छु भने तपाईको phone number is easily accessible by our staff when they search you. Okay. Now we need to find a way to make that accessible only to those that who really need it. So try to find a way to mask that information. We need to find a way to mask your address.
Physical address.
हैन. So अहिले चाहिँ हाम्रो CRM मा somebody can search your username and get that information. हैन. We need to make it such that that is not accessible to everyone, only those that really need it. And that too through a challenge. And just there has to be a challenge to ask a question before that data becomes visible.
So ISP ले data स्टोर गर्ने अथवा त्यसको कमर्सियल युटिलाइजेसन गर्ने चाहिँ हुँदैन. तर यदि मैले कुनै सफ्टवेयरको प्रयोग गरिरहेको छु भने चाहिँ त्यो सफ्टवेयरले चाहिँ त्यो डेटाको कसरी प्रयोग गर्छ भन्ने कुरा पनि हुनसक्ला. हैन. जस्तो फेसबुक नै एउटा काण्डमा 2 वर्ष अगाडि हैन
क्याम्ब्रिज एनालिटिका
एक्ज्याक्टली त्यो एनालिटिक्सको लागि भनेर प्रयोग भएको. सो त्यो पार्ट हुनसक्छ. त त्यसको लागि भनेर चाहिँ अझै लार्जर कन्ज्युमर अवेरनेस पनि आउनुपर्ने होला नि.
अब यो ठुलो कम्पनीहरू बाहिरका हैन, अब टिकटक, फेसबुक, गुगल यिनीहरू नै आउँछन्. यिनीहरूलाई चाहिँ नेपाल जस्तो सानो मुलुकले कसरी रेगुलेट गर्ने होला हैन. द्याट इज अ भेरी बिग च्यालेन्ज. Okay, because we don't have the muscle, we don't have overreaching powers to regulate them.
त इन्डियासँग त छ. इन्डियाले त गर्नु खोज्छ.
India is huge.
त उनीहरूले त्यो रेगुलेट गर्दाखेरि त्यो जुन रेगुलेसन्सहरू बन्ला नि इन्टरनेसनल रेगुलेसन्सहरू जसले फेसबुकलाई बाइन्ड गर्छ त्यही हामीले प्रयोग गर्न मिल्दैन नेपाल.
मिल्दैन, किनभने उनीहरूले भनिदिन्छ म गर्दिनँ, तेरो देशको ल अनुसार म गर्दिनँ, पर्यो भने म तेरो देशमा सर्भिस विथड्र गरिदिन्छु. किनभने your country is not important. I don't get revenue. I'm not generating any tangible revenue to meet your compliances. So this is a challenge that most small economies face globally. Even large, even like countries like Vietnam.
Right.
You know, Vietnam had come out with some regulations to govern Facebook. Facebook withdrew from Vietnam. Facebook was gone from Vietnam for some days. And then the government backtracked. Listen, the government reversed their policies because there was such a hue and cry from the people in
So
Vietnam.
what do we do then त्यो यस्तो खालको सिचुएसनमा?
It's a very difficult negotiation game. You know, that small countries like Nepal or even bigger countries like Vietnam or Thailand, they don't have any muscle over these large companies. Only big countries like China and India have that muscle.
Right.
Because they cannot afford to lose these markets.
Yeah.
But they can happily withdraw from Nepal tomorrow. So
Right.
so हाम्रो Nepal Sarkar wants to come out with data policies that govern them.
हजुर.
Like for example, लोकल मेरो देशका नागरिकको डेटा मेरै देशमा स्टोर हुनुपर्छ. द्याट्स लाइक अ भेरी कमन regulation that's popular now. Don't store my user data in another country. त्यतिसम्म त्यो रेगुलेसन ल्याए पनि सायद मान्न सक्छ बिकज इट्स बिकम ट्रेन्डी, इट्स बिकम वाइडली एक्सेप्टेड. तर त्योभन्दा बढी अब म ट्याक्स लगाउँछु, यो गर्छु, त्यो गर्छु भन्ने कुरा ल्याउन थाल्यो भने दे क्यान जस्ट से ओके वी विथड्र फ्रम यर कन्ट्री.
ओके. अब अर्को यो डेटा इकोनोमी होइन अथवा आइसिटी इन्डस्ट्रीको कुरा गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ एकचोटि लगानी गरिसकेको इन्फ्रास्ट्रक्चर लामो समयसम्म हामीहरूले त्यसको बेनिफिट रिप हुन सक्छौँ बिकज त्यो जुन टनल बन्छ त्यो त इट्स क्वाइट थिक. त्यहाँबाट आउने जुन होइन डेटा जति आउन सक्छ त्यो थिक हुने भयो होइन. तर अर्को पार्ट भनेको त्यो डेटाको वरिपरि त्यसको प्रयोगको वरिपरि चाहिने मान्छेहरू भयो नि त एचआर इन्फ्रास्ट्रक्चर. नेपालको एचआर इन्फ्रास्ट्रक्चर चाहिँ कहाँ छ दाइ अहिले?
नेपालमा अब आइटीको क्षेत्रको कुरा गर्ने हो भने सबै क्षेत्र जस्तै
हजुर
आइटी क्षेत्रका जनशक्ति, दक्ष जनशक्ति देशबाट पलायन भइरहेछन् होइन. कोभिडले चाहिँ त्यसलाई अलिकति अरेस्ट गरेको छ, अलिकति घटाएको छ. किनभने कोभिडले एउटा बाटो देखाइदिएको छ जुन बाटोमा देशबाट पलायन नभइकन पनि होइन दक्ष कामदारले नेपालमै बसेर राम्रो पैसा कमाउन सक्छ विदेशी कम्पनीको लागि काम गरेर. सो इट्स क्रिएटेड this environment, this system where, I don't need to leave the country to work for an American company, for example. And the American company is happy with me staying in Nepal and paying me less. होइन मलाई अमेरिका लगेको भए सायद मलाई इक्जाम्पल $70,000 तिर्नु पर्थ्यो. अब नेपालमा बसेर यसलाई वर्षको $20,000 तिर्यो भने पनि मिल्दो रहेछ र काम चाहिँ निकाल्न सकिँदो रहेछ भन्ने सबैलाई अब विश्वास छ.
That is a big change.
It's a big change. So त्यसको फलस्वरूप चाहिँ पलायन हुने घटेको छ क्रम होइन. तर पनि पलायन भइरहेछन् र आइटी क्षेत्रमा दक्ष जनशक्ति हामीसँग छ, नेपालमा छ. तर तिनीहरूलाई चाहिँ भनौँ न प्रोडक्टिभ बनाउनलाई धेरै मेहनत गर्नुपर्छ.
What are those productivity gaps, like the skill gaps अथवा एटिट्युड ग्याप्स चाहिँ के हो दाइ अहिले हाम्रो आइसिटी सेक्टरमा? किन म देख्छु कि जस्तो यहाँकोमा अब 5500जना कामदारहरू होला होइन. कतिवटा टेक कम्पनीजहरू छन् 200देखि 500, 200देखि 500को रेन्जमा होइन, इभन 1000. सो what are the HR gaps, skills gaps अहिले?
ओके, अब सबभन्दा पहिला त लेट्स लुक एट आइटीकै कुरा गर्छौँ है. फेरि अब धेरै जस्ता विद्यार्थीहरू यो क्षेत्रमा आउँछन् यो सोचेर कि यसबाट चाहिँ विदेश जान पाइन्छ. ओके, सो फर्स्ट अफ अल the reason for choosing the vocation is wrong. Okay, they choose this vocation. Why? Because it will give me a passport or a visa to go overseas. होइन त्यसले गर्दा चाहिँ they don't necessarily have the skills. For example, यसमा mathematics चाहिन्छ होइन, logical reasoning thinking चाहिन्छ होइन. They may not have those skills, but they will still jump into it. So I think there's a slight gap over there. Okay, त्यसपछि आइसकेपछि हाम्रा जुन कलेजेस र युनिभर्सिटिज छन् यहाँ, say for a very few होइन, they're all focused on how to get them to graduate or complete their 4 year of education. होइन, the focus is not on how to make them into productive students. होइन, डिग्री कसरी दिएर पठाइदिने होइन. सो र विद्यार्थीको पनि त्यही एटिट्युड हुन्छ हेर्नुहोस् होइन. The students are equally to blame. Okay, and the parents are to blame with the students. Why? Because the student also cares about getting the degree. How can I get the degree with the least amount of effort? Is their priority. The parents, they think मैले त भर्ना गरिदिएँ नि, मेरो त जिम्मेवारी सिद्धियो. अब मेरो छोरा या छोरी क्लासको बेलामा न्युरोड घुमिरहेछन् कि क्लासमा छन् मलाई थाहा पनि छैन, मलाई मतलब पनि छैन. Okay, so what I'm trying to tell you is that the whole attitude towards education and graduating needs to change.
Right.
You know, the attitude needs to change that I'm here to study and get skilled, and getting the degree is the byproduct.
Right.
You know, getting the degree is not the primary motive. Getting educated and skilled is the first priority.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
So that I think because of this attitude, we get people who have a degree but don't necessarily understand much. होइन एन्ड देन दे निड टु गो थ्रु रि-एजुकेसन
राइट जुन चाहिँ तपाईँहरूले त्यो काम गर्दै गर्दाखेरि उनीहरूलाई सिक्नुपर्ने कुरा हुन्छ अझै जस्तो अहिले त हामीहरू च्याट जिपिटीको कुरा गर्दैछौँ होइन एआईको कुरा गर्दैछौँ भनेपछि त संसार त एउटा एकदम फास्ट पेसबाट अर्को ठाउँमा पुगिरहेको छ होइन यो सबै कुराहरू पनि त मानेर राख्छ होला नि यो हाम्रो यो आइटी इन्डस्ट्रीको लागि होइन भनेपछि आई डोन्ट नो
डेफिनेटली
सो त्यो हो भने चाहिँ हामीले गर्नुपर्ने कस्तो खालको स्किलिङ गर्नुपर्ने हो कि वेयर इज द फ्युचर अफ स्किल्स वेयर इज द फ्युचर अफ जब्स हामीले गर्नुपर्ने चाहिँ के हो त त्यसमै कम्पनीजहरूले ओर एज अ गभर्मेन्ट
ओके सो यसमा चाहिँ अब मेरो नलेज पनि लेक्चरहरू सुनेर हो पढेर हो होइन सबभन्दा पहिलो कुरा त तपाईँले भने जस्तै यो एआईको युगमा हामी प्रवेश गरिसक्यौँ एन्ड यो इरिभर्सिबल हो यो होइन एन्ड यु क्यानट ब्याक ट्र्याक नाउ we have already gone into this area होइन and we will only continue going forward अहिले chat GPT 4 निस्क्यो 5-6 निस्किन्छ होइन and a lot of the manual kind of work that people have been doing is going to change okay त्यो irreversible भनेपछि Nepal as a country what I keep telling people is that Nepal should not be the country that creates large 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 people outsource back-end offices, but it should be the place that focuses on creating high-value products with lower number of people.
Sophisticated products.
You know, we need to be involved in more higher value products.
But export-oriented.
Or export-oriented. Why am I saying that? Because we don't have hundreds of thousands of engineers like India does. होइन यहाँ आजको दिनमा इफ ए कम्पनी स्टार्ट्स इन नेपाल एन्ड दे वान्ट टु हायर 1000 पिपल धौधो बित्छ उसको उसले त्यो 1000जना कसरी पुरा गर्छ भने अरूको तानेर नै गर्छ सो द्याट कम्पनी विल स्टार्ट हेड हन्टिङ एन्ड स्टार्ट टु टेक एक्जिस्टिङ पिपल फ्रम अदर कम्पनीज एन्ड रिक्रुटिङ देम होइन ओके सो भनेपछि यहाँ यस्तो पनि होइन कि दक्ष जनशक्ति ट्रेन जनशक्ति फालाफाल छ भन्ने पनि छैन ओके देयर इज अ शोर्टेज देयर आर प्लेन्टी अफ ग्रेजुएट्स बट देयर इज अ शोर्टेज अफ प्रोडक्टिभ क्रिम होइन इम्प्लोएबल जनशक्तिको अभाव छ ओके भनेपछि वी शुड फोकस अन हाई भ्याल्यू products that we can export right that doesn't need thousands that works in the hundreds but you earn a lot of money
right
र त्यस्ता कम्पनीहरु छन् पनि यहाँ
छन्
it's not that we are not doing it हैन there are entrepreneurs creative entrepreneurs who are doing that and that's what we should focus on
right so भनेपछि एकातिर त्यो हो भने अर्कोतिर चाहिँ एडुकेसनल इन्स्टिट्युसन्सहरूले चाहिँ त्यो क्रिम अफ द क्रिम कसरी निकाल्ने भन्ने कुरामा चाहिँ अझै मेहनत गर्दै जानु पर्यो इन ट्युन विथ वेयर द वर्ल्ड इज इन ट्युन विथ द नेपाल्स इन्डस्ट्रिज होइन
या एन्ड द करिकुलम निड्स टु बी कन्स्टेन्टली अपडेटेड
राइट
होइन अब करिकुलम मे हेभ बिन अपडेटेड 3-4-5 years ago द्याट्स अलरेडी आउटडेटेड होइन होइन जस्तै अब प्रोग्रामिङ ल्याङ्ग्वेजको कुरा गऱ्यो भने मेरो नलेज अनुसार पाइथन इज वाट सेल्स टुडे पाइथन इज लाइक what's used most popular so why even teach people other things मैले भन्नु खोजेको हैन हैन maybe focus just on python or make sure that python at least is covered
right
हैन so आजको popular के छ त हैन what is popular what is highly demanded in the industry त्यसको बेसिसमा करिकुलम बनाएर गरौँ न त हैन so that when these people come out they get employed
right No, this is very interesting. Like यो जुन ट्रिपल हेलिक्सको हामीले अहिले कुरा गरिसक्यो नि अलि अगाडि गभर्मेन्टको कुरा गऱ्यौँ कस्तो खालको पोलिसी ग्याप्सहरू छ भनेर त्यसपछि प्राइभेट सेक्टरकै अहिले कुरा गऱ्यौँ इन दि आइसिटी इन्डस्ट्री अनि एडुकेसनको पनि यो ट्रिपल हेलिक्स चाहिँ अझै बलियो भयो भने राम्रो हुने कुरा भयो त अब म अलि यो इन्भेस्टमेन्टतिर फेरि फिर्ता आउन चाहन्छु होइन You started with के अरे नेगोसिएटेड $2,500 बाट $3,500 त्यतिखेरको लागि त धेरै पैसा हो त्यो पैसालाई सिड फन्डिङको रूपबाट प्रयोग गरेर जुनियर इयरमा नेपाल आएर यो सबै गर्नुभयो अनि अघि थाहा पाएँ मैले पछि गएर ग्रेजुएसनको लागि पछि जानु भएको रहेछ होइन झन्डै नेपालको चाहिँ दि ओन्ली कलेज ड्रप आउट भइरहेछ तपाईँको घरको सबै कारणले गर्दा ग्रेजुएट गर्नुभयो सो फ्रम $3,500 you're now the recipient of the biggest private equity investment in any Nepali firm right?
foreign investment
है योभन्दा अगाडि अलि यहाँले लक्ष्मी ब्याङ्कले नै यहाँमा इन्भेस्ट गरेको थियो होइन
लक्ष्मी ब्याङ्क त लोन दियो
लोन लक्ष्मी ब्याङ्कबाट लोन लिनुभएको थियो सो एक्सेस टु फाइनेन्सको कुरा भयो तर इन्भेस्टमेन्ट वाइज यो सिग्निफिकेन्ट हो होइन and this is very exciting for Nepal, for this industry, for any entrepreneur. And particularly, hopefully, हाम्रो audience-ले चाहिँ यहाँको कहानी सुनेपछि अनि यो हुन्छ नि त्यो केही नभएकोदेखि यहाँसम्म मेहनत गर्ने उद्यमीको लागि यो ठुलो कुरा हो. It was what, $17 million?
Yeah.
2 billion Nepali rupees? होइन 2 billion Nepali. How did you make that happen? सजिलो त भएन होला. How did you make that happen?
Well, this one was not difficult.
Not difficult,
Not
okay.
difficult. Why? Because we already had an established track record. So our first foreign direct investment came in 2019.
Okay, 4 years ago.
2017, we signed a term sheet. And with, at that time, BII, British International Investment, was known as CDC.
CDC,
you know? So CDC is a wholly owned subsidiary of the UK government. You know? It's their private equity arm. So and they look for development impact. So they're not looking to just invest money and make a return. They want to make sure that their money creates a development impact through the private sector. So हामीले चाहिँ so convincing and making that happen in 2017 was the bigger challenge. किन भने at that time we were relatively small. You know, we didn't have.
How small were you?
Well, you know, earlier on I had said that the growth that we really got was in the last 4 years. And then if I stretch it, 8 years. Okay. To give you an example, in 2014, 2013-14, we had maybe 30,000 customers, households, होइन म कन्फरेन्सहरूमा जाने गर्थेँ अनि विदेशमा कन्फरेन्समा जाँदाखेरि we used to say that we are the second largest ISP in the country because Nepal Telecom was the largest at that time. They had overtaken us. And it sounded big, second largest. So they would ask, कति ग्राहक छ त? अनि भन्नै लाज लाग्ने. So, you know, so 30,000 भनेपछि people would be like, the केही होइन. So we were around that number, 30 to 40,000. But we had already started building fiber and it was proving to be very successful. होइन सो त्यो कुराहरू देखेर नै CDC took an interest in investing in us. Okay, but as you know, any foreign investor, and especially one that is owned by a government, a UK government fund, they would want to make sure that everything else is in place too.
Yeah.
Right? So the business has to be good, but the governance has to be great. The company has to be ethically managed, and so they do a very thorough due diligence on us,
right?
On me, on my partners, on the company,
right?
And one of the things that cropped up in their due diligence very early on was that we had been rated by the government of Nepal's tax authorities. It was front page Kantipur News. So it took me 4 seatings with them to finally convince them that that Worldlink was not at fault. And being able to convince them and bring them on board was, for me, the biggest moral victory. So I did not view it as a victory in terms of raising capital at that time. I viewed it as a victory in terms of basically washing my past. You know, the past, what do you call it? Dag dhabba bhन्छ नि,
हैन? Next mountain ma leap गर्नु.
So I was able to wash away all these accusations against me, because now a third party who's highly credible is putting their stamp of approval on me, on my company, that no, these people are well governed, ethically managed company. So that was the difficult part. Yo charanma ta, they had already seen how we work. We had grown in the last 4 years. We have probably grown like 10x. So they had seen all that. So for them to make a decision to invest further in us was very simple.
त्यो चाहिँ ट्रान्सफर्मेटिभ भयो, यो चाहिँ इन्क्रिमेन्टल भयो हैन? त त्यो त्यसको लागि भनेर चाहिँ यहाँले सिस्टम बनाउनु पर्यो. त्यो सिस्टम चाहिँ यहाँले सुरुदेखि बनाइरहनु भएको थियो कि त्यो इन्भेस्टमेन्ट ल्याउनु पर्छ भनेर त्यतिखेर अलिक बढी बनाउन थाल्नु भयो?
हामीले चाहिँ 2012 मा हाम्रो ट्याक्स रेट भएको थियो. Again, coming back to that, and then one decision that we took internally was that we would, if we are to do business in Nepal, okay, we are going to do it in the right way, or we will exit. Okay, यो हामी चाहिँ यताउता गरेर हैन, घुस खुवाएर हैन, यो यो यस्ता क्रियाकलापमा संलग्न भएर चाहिँ हामी बिजनेस गर्दैनौँ हैन. And we took that decision because we realized that it's our past activities that have backfired on us. Okay, so after that we took a decision that बरु बिजनेस नगर्ने, बरु प्याकअप गरेर देश छोडेर जाने, तर क्लिन भएर बस्ने हैन, clean in every way. So I think that really helped,
right?
Because when they did when they fully investigated us, they found that we were clean. They found that everything is good. चोखो रहेछ यो company त हैन. So we had not consciously prepared for an investment, but we did prepare for it.
Yeah. अनि दाइको कहानी सुन्दाखेरि के देखिन्छ भने यो नेतृत्वको भाषामा चुनौतीलाई अवसरमा बनाउनुपर्छ, अनि त्यो अवसरले चाहिँ सामाजिक प्रभाव ल्याउनुपर्छ हैन. कन्सिस्टेन्टली द सेम मेसेज इज कमिङ, राइट? किनभने तपाईँले यो इन्भेस्टमेन्टको लागि त गर्नु भएन, तर यु वान्टेड टु क्रिएट द सिस्टम बिकज यु डिडन्ट वान्ट अनदर रेट, यु वान्टेड टु क्रिएट अ क्लिन सिस्टम, पुट अ क्लिन सिस्टम इन प्लेस. सो त्यो जुन रेट भयो अथवा जुन एडभर्सिटी आयो त्यसैलाई नै अपर्च्युनिटी टु क्रिएट वेल फङ्सनिङ गुड सिस्टम बनाउनु भयो. यो पैसाको प्रयोग चाहिँ कहाँ हुन्छ त? दिस इज अ बिग अमाउन्ट अफ मनी एन्ड आई हियर यसको प्रयोग चाहिँ यहाँले रुरल डेभलपमेन्टमा पनि गर्न खोजिरहनु भएको छ हैन. क्यान यु टेल अस मोर अबाउट द प्लान्स?
So it's a big amount of money, but to give you some perspective, Worldlink invests to around 400 to 500 crores every year. Okay, and we have been doing that for several years now. So for us, that's not a big amount. Because our industry is very capital intensive. नेटवर्क बनाउनु पर्यो, नेटवर्क बनाइसकेपछि ग्राहकलाई जोड्दाखेरि ठुलो लगानी हुन्छ, राउटर दिनु पर्यो, तार दिनु पर्यो, ग्राहकबाट खासै हामीले त्यति पैसा उठाउँदैनौँ त्यसलाई रिकभर गर्नलाई. So it's a very capital intensive industry. But what we have realized in the company is that if we want to have long term predictable growth, then the only way for us to secure that is to go into rural Nepal. Okay, so we have a strong orientation towards development, but also we are very long term oriented, and we know where we will make money in the future.
So business at the base of the pyramid bhन्छ नि,
हुनै पर्छ त्यो हैन.
Okay,
so if we don't do that, nobody else is going to do it, because nobody has the appetite as Worldlink does, as well as the access to finance that we have today. Okay, and B, if we don't do it, maybe somebody will do it and we lose the opportunity.
Strategic too.
हैन, so strategic पनि छ हैन, किनभने यो इन्डस्ट्री कस्तो छ भने first mover takes it. हैन, if you are the first mover and if you provide good service, customers don't usually churn. Customers don't really leave you. हैन, if you give poor service, of course they'll leave you.
Right.
The most customers don't want to keep switching their internet service provider.
Right. So त्यो रुरल नेपालमा टेक्नोलोजी सेटअप गर्न पनि गाह्रो होला एउटा त हैन. अर्को त्यसको कन्जम्सन कस्तो होला? I mean, that's where Nepalको growth is, we know. But tell us more. त्यहाँको रुरल कन्जम्सन अफ डेटा चाहिँ कस्तो हुन सक्ला?
Okay.
उद्यमीहरूले कसरी प्रयोग गर्न सक्ला?
So यसमा चाहिँ सबभन्दा पहिलो कुरा त नेटवर्क बनाउन चाहिँ रुरल क्षेत्रमा, ग्रामीण क्षेत्रमा, अर्बन क्षेत्र भन्दा अब I don't have the exact numbers, but I would tell you it would be at least 3 to 4 times more expensive. Okay, the capital investment would be 3 to 4 times more expensive. What I'm trying to say is that for us to connect a house in Kathmandu would be 4 times cheaper than connecting a house in let's say some rural village in Karnali.
And you will have to charge actually the same or less?
The less. We cannot charge the same.
Exactly.
We know it, okay, I know we have to charge less.
Right.
So what I'm trying to point out is that it's a very long term game. So when we invest, we are looking at 8 to 9 years before we get a payback on our investment. अब त्यत्रो appetite चाहिँ नेपाली कम्पनीसँग हुँदैन. The only reason why we are able to take it on is because we have access to these funds who look for exactly what we're trying to do. So they are very happy to work with us because they want to create this development impact. At the same time, they know that this will pay off in the future.
Right.
It's like investing in hydropower. And you don't invest in hydropower for 5-10 years.
Yes.
You invest for 25 years. So hamro industry pani testai ho. You
Right.
invest for 25 years. So we are willing to take on that challenge. We're trying to optimize it to see how do we do it so that it's most efficient possible. We cannot cover every single household in rural communities, but our plan is to double our current network, and which should bring us to maybe 65-70% coverage of all households of Nepal.
75%.
70%, 65-70%. Currently, we cover around 1/3 of all households of Nepal. Okay, so we're planning.
That's how many households, Aile?
अहिलेको नयाँ सेन्ससले चाहिँ बढाइदिएको छ. Now it's 4 to a house. So I think now the number of households is 7 million or something.
Okay.
Right? So we cover around 1/3. Our network coverage is around 1/3 of that today. So we want to double that.
2.5, हजुर.
And we want to double that in the next 2 to 3 years. We want to finish that, building that network.
Right.
अब यसको impact के होला त? हैन? So we have been operating in Karnali for quite some time now. And I was fortunate to go to Shea Foksundo, walk around Karnali last year on a 1-week trip. And what I realized is that people have smartphones. So Nepalese are very progressive that way. Smartphone बुढासँग पनि छ, बच्चासँग पनि छ. Anybody who has a phone is a smartphone. अनि इन्टरनेटको कनेक्सन पाउन साथ हैन, they start using it. Like I'll give you an example. In Shea Foksundo, we inaugurated a free Wi-Fi there. So we brought free Wi-Fi to Shea Foksundo, and surprisingly, I saw this old lady. She did not know how to use it completely. A younger person, maybe a relative, maybe a grandchild of hers was with her, and phone जोडेर तुरुन्तै उनीहरूले के गर्न थाले त्यसमा हैन. र गएर हेर्दाखेरि त what they are doing is basically Facebooking.
अहिलेको त्यस्तो प्याटर्न देखिन्छ
हैन. अब if we had a visit to a village recently with UK parliamentarians, and the ladies in the parliament, where we met ladies there, Chitlangma, and the parliamentarians are very curious on what do you use the internet for, because most people assume automatically that they use it for social media or entertainment. So the first thing that she said is we use the internet to keep in touch with our husbands who are living out of our village or overseas. So now we have a social connection with them.
Right.
Earlier, we would not have any communication except for voice with them. But now we can have daily video calls, which makes us at least feel that we are close.
Social value create
Social value create by this go. One lady was saying that मेरो छोरी काठमाडौँमा बस्छ, and now I can call her anytime I want.
Right.
Like there's no limitation, and it's almost free.
Yeah.
I can talk to her, video call with her as much as I want.
Right.
अनि त्यस्तै गरी चाहिँ we had visited in another village, we had visited a tailor shop, run by a 22-year-old girl. And again, the assumption was automatically that TikToking garcha hola, but the first thing that she said is that I use the internet to show my customers what is the latest fashion globally. Okay. And they are now able to choose exactly what they want. And
your design ko, त्यो design ko,
पहिला I didn't have that. So because of that, I get good customers, because I can show them exactly what they will get, and I can show them what is the latest fashion trend, and stitch it accordingly. So what I'm trying to say is that the young people are quite smart. If you give them a tool, they will learn how to use it. Okay?
Yeah.
There will be some abuse as well, but we have to take that with a pinch of salt. Not everything in the world has a possible negative use of it, but if you give them the tool, they do figure out how to use it.
Yeah. So अब यहाँको यात्राको बारेमा धेरै लामो कुरा गरेपछि अब like what's next for you भन्दा is this the area, your rural development सँग जोडेको जुन कुराहरू गर्नु भएको छ, is this what you want to work on for the next decade? What do you have in your mind for the next decade?
So the first
for
thing
yourself
is, we have we have a very clear vision in our company, and we say that our vision is to connect everyone anywhere all the time. Of course, that does limit us to Nepal because Nepal's current regulatory framework prohibits us from investing out of the country. But so in Nepal, we want to achieve that dream. We want to connect them. Our hope was that the government would give us spectrum, which would enable us to connect Nepalese in a faster and cheaper way, but that never came through. And I have actually given up on it.
You have?
Yeah, I don't think it will happen.
This is Wi-Fi, wireless spectrum.
This is wireless spectrum because there's just too much politics around the wireless spectrum and mobility space in Nepal. Nepal is the only country which is a full duopoly. नामको लागि मात्रै 2-3 अरू सेवा प्रदायक छन्, but they're pretty much defunct. Right? So I've given up on that. So what else do we have then? The only tool we have to fulfill our vision is fiber now. So maybe it's a blessing in disguise that we did not choose the easier path, that is temporary, but we are going for a more difficult path that is a more permanent and a better solution, because you're bringing fiber, which basically gives unlimited data, fast internet to the populations.
Oh, that's true.
In telecom, it's very interesting in technology that whatever technology you espouse and you make that as your competitive advantage, ultimately haunts you and creates your downfall.
Yeah.
Okay. For example, in the West, most companies invested in copper and they fell in love with the copper. So even countries like UK today, they're far behind on fiber broadband because they fell in love with their copper and they refuse to replace it. Okay. So that copper became NTC's downfall because they espoused it. They tried to keep it close with them and they banged on it. But as a result, they fell behind in the broadband race because they didn't deploy fiber fast enough. We were left with nothing, no option but to do fiber. So we had to do it. Maybe if NTC had unbundled and they had given us copper, we would have never done fiber.
Right.
You see? So in the tech space, in our industries, you have to have the courage to recognize when your technology is outdated, no matter how good it is, no matter how well it is serving you, and scrap it.
Right.
And go for the next thing.
So, मेरो अन्तिम प्रश्न के दाइ, शेक्सपियरको एउटा लाइन छ कि, द ट्र्याक अफ लभ नेभर डिड रन स्मुथ भनेर, होइन? आई थिङ्क दिस इज मिडसमर नाइट्स ड्रिम. ट्र्याक अफ एन एन्टरप्रेन्योरसिप इज नट स्मुथ. धेरै चुनौतीहरू छन्. आज हामीले यहाँको कुरा सुन्दैछौँ, तर 2 महिना जति अगाडि प्रेम आचार्यको कहानी पनि हामीले सुन्यौँ, होइन? So how do you keep your sanity? How do you keep going? Where do you find your hope? Because तपाईले जस्तो खालको पहाड चढ्नु खोज्दै हुनुहुन्छ, अब त्यो पहाड त झन्झन अग्लो छ नि त, सानो सानो छैन, झन्झन अग्लो छ, हैन? यो रुरल नेपाल भनेको त झन अग्लो छ. Where do you find hope?
Well, I think one thing I saw very early on in my childhood from my father is that you focus on your work. हैन? हाम्रो गीतामा भन्छ नि, कर्मण्यवाधिकारस्ते मा फले सुखदाचन, हैन? So you focus on your work, on your karma, and let everything else fall in place, and you take it as it comes. Now, if we start analyzing the situation of Nepal and looking at all that's happening that's negative, most of us would flee, because there are greener pastures elsewhere. But if we view it from the perspective that, let's focus on our vision, our work, our goals, and take the challenges as they come, then we will make progress. It may get slowed down at times, but we'll still continue to make progress towards our end goal. So I usually don't worry or think about what's happening. I don't even read the newspapers anymore. No, really, I've stopped.
No social media, no newspaper.
I don't read the newspapers as well, and I just go to the business section and see what's there. The front page padyo bhanita, it's depressing. Any newspaper you open and read the first 2 pages, it's depressing.
So you religiously do this?
Yeah, I don't read the front page.
So I guess then the moral is focus on what you have and find joy in that journey. The rest will follow.
The rest will follow, and try to bind it to some aspirational goal. Jस्तै we in Worldlink believe that when we will bring internet to Dolpa, fiber to Dolpa, which we will hopefully do in the next 2 years, we will transform Dolpa.
Yeah.
So that's great motivation, right? I mean,
Beautiful.
Who has that opportunity to transform Dolpa? We have that opportunity, and it's our duty. It's our birthright, almost, to do that.
Right.
So that's how we view it, and that's why we do it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dai, for everything you and the Worldlink family is doing. From then to now, you keep finding new mountains, bigger mountains, right? Nepal is a mountainous nation. You're addressing these challenges one at a time. But I think you're also creating that environment for so many others to leapfrog. Thank you so much. It was beautiful talking to you.
Thank you, Pukar.
Thank you so much.
I think the hope is that people get hope.
Yes.
Right? Thank you. Thank you for having me.